But when it comes down to that exact same argument, but from a liberal perspective, that's it. But if you are going to come to me and say individual actions are actually going to change the ecological disaster that is anthropogenic climate change, then no, I will tell you that you are actually just simply repeating propaganda created by the very same polluters.
You're waking up every night at 3 a.m. because you're so worried about your friggin'
carbon footprint.
We're talking bolt up, cold sweat, neck whiplash like you're in a trailer for a Harry Potter movie.
My carbon footprint! Well, I gotta shrink that thing down or else the whole world is gonna die.
Yeah,
like
we'll
Harry
talk about
Potter's
this guy in a
parents,
second.
Or Dumbledore, or J.K. Rowling's reputation as a beloved author and not someone with weirdly draconian ideas about gender. What are you doing, J.K.? It doesn't matter. Everyone's personal carbon footprint is the key to solving climate change, right? No, not right. I might go so far as to say wrong. Hello and welcome to Climate Town. My name is Raleigh Williams. I'm a citizen, complainer, Dracula apologist, and climate science grad student. And I'm here to tell you that your carbon footprint is bullshit. Okay, we didn't all just start spontaneously saying carbon footprint. Somebody invented the term as a way to define the amount of CO2 a person generates based on their personal actions. And it seems reasonable enough. I mean, it's genuinely a good idea to consider ways you can lessen your personal impact on the planet, only that's not what a carbon footprint is for. Oh, that's what they want you to think it's for, but they're lying to you. And the way I know this is because the they I keep tantalizingly referring to, the people who both created and popularized the term carbon footprint, are none other than BP.
What size is your carbon footprint?
Say again?
Size of what?
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 No idea. What are you making?
What is that?
Not environmentalists, not the Democrats, not even my God King Al Gore. The carbon footprint was strategically crafted by fossil fuel companies, ? Now you may remember
What?
BP as the company that checks notes.
What? Okay, what's next, Climate Town? Are you going to tell me that anthropogenic climate change was predicted by another oil and gas producer approximately 30, 40 years prior to like the scientific community trying to desperately mainstreamify it? Oh, come on. There's no fucking way, Climate Town. Get out of here. That's gotta be a lie, right? There's no fucking shot that they would have known about the impact on the environment due to the oil and gas industry's impact on the environment could not have been foreseen by the internal scientists at Exxon, for example, and then purposely shielded from the public and then actually utilized so that they could have a mass strategy once this became publicly available information. They certainly didn't just use that as an opportunity to figure out how to effectively create counter propaganda against the thing that they're responsible for. No shot.
Dumped 200 million gallons of crude oil into the Gulf of Mexico. So why was a fossil fuel company sinking millions of dollars trying to publicize the term carbon footprint? Because they knew they had a genius marketing campaign on their hands.
Okay, what's next? British Petroleum is responsible for the fucking Iranian coup. And perhaps like most responsible for modern day Iran and all of its current political issues. Come on! I don't believe you. No way, dude. That would be crazy. If some guy in Iran decided to, I don't know, nationalize its own extraction industry, but then America and the UK were given, and America and UK were like, hey, well, you can't do that because that's British Petroleum property. You can't actually take it over. Oh no, please don't do that. Anyway, let's continue.
But unlike other genius marketing ideas like Got Milk or singing Chili's Baby Back Ribs or Budweiser's hilarious Dilly Dilly thing.
Dilly dilly. Dilly dilly. Dilly dilly. Dilly dilly.
Dilly Dilly. Well, unlike Dilly Dilly, BP crafted the carbon footprint as a way to get people to blame themselves for climate change instead of oil companies.
The effect that my living has on the earth in terms of the products I consume.
So if they jammed the idea of the carbon footprint, jam the idea of the carbon footprint down our throats hard enough, and enough people bought in, they could reframe climate change and fossil fuel use as a personal problem. BP could then continue to burn, according to their own website, 12 million times more fossil fuels than the average person, without any significant repercussions. I mean, how can you have a carbon footprint if you don't even have feet? Excuse me, sir, we're trying to shoot a thing here. I don't know where this cat came from. Cat. Hey, I'm doing a thing about how BP invented the carbon footprint. Oh, you already knew about that? This whole thing started as a way for BP to deal with that
Cat knew about that.
PR nightmare. You might know it as climate change. And if you don't believe in climate change, first of all, thank you so much for watching. I thank you. But regardless of whether you do or don't believe in climate change, it's irrelevant because BP officially does.
Vegans, handshake emoji anarchists, unintentionally falling for expertly crafted big corporate propaganda that hyper focuses on individual reliance to systemic problems. Sometimes the vegans are anarchists, in many respects, but I'm just saying. Oh, come on, man. There are valid reasons to separate from the propaganda. Yeah, those valid reasons are about the moral considerations of consuming animals as food. Okay? That's it. And there is, you're correct. The moral considerations, oh my God, vegans literally are only 3% of the community right now. The moral considerations are correct. If you consider animals to be something that you shouldn't consume, that human beings know better and they shouldn't eat animals, then yeah, I get it. I don't think so.
Does believe in climate change, and not just internally. In a 2005 advertisement, they proudly exclaimed, "We became the first major energy company to publicly acknowledge the need to take steps against global warming." And with a serious statement like that, I mean, oh boy, I think we can really expect BP to divest from oil and invest in renewable energy. And what do you mean that didn't happen at all? Like at all?
Wait. Climate Town is wrong. On one account. Well, he's not wrong, but it doesn't really do anything for this video. But BP does invest in renewable energy, just like every other oil and gas producer. Except they don't do it because they want to save the planet. They do it because they want to hedge. And in other instances, they do it because they want to stop progress from happening in the renewable energy side. No, it's not even for PR. The PR is just icing on the cake. They absolutely do purchase these oil and gas companies 100% do purchase renewable energy companies because they want to keep being like the main guys that produce the energy, and they see the writing on the wall, as they have for hundreds or almost 100 years. Sorry, not hundreds. But they also do it specifically so they can like keep pushing, keep stalling the actual progress that could be made in the renewable energy side.
What do you mean I shouldn't be surprised? What do you mean, who am I talking to?
What do we fucking do? This shit sucks. Megaphonics. First step is not to listen to Hassan telling 30,000 people that individual action does nothing for a broader society. I mean, you're here. I don't know what you're talking about. Like, I talk about that literally all the time. Megaphonics. I talk about that pretty much every day. Glazing over the impact of plant-based diets on the environment and watching a video about oil interests is insane. Well, this is perhaps the best video to watch because I just told you that your carbon footprint and your individual impact on climate change is a direct British Petroleum created PR initiative to move the conversation away from systemic solutions. And the only time when there are actual systemic solutions like ordinances or any kind of fucking law being passed, it's almost always shit that doesn't actually help. Okay? It's always like, oh, we made it so that it's illegal to have a plastic straw. Or we made it so that, you know, your Ralph's, your local Ralph's is going to charge you 50 cents for a fucking plastic bag. They're not doing actual public transportation. They're not doing any actual meaningful ways of addressing factory farming and agricultural production that yields a ton of fucking waste. They're not doing any of that shit. It's just greenwashing.
Too. What do you mean the whole what do you mean section's gonna get cut? Okay, it's gone. What do you mean who am I? But you can't just fake it, right? I mean, you gotta have a little thing called showmanship. And that's why BP hired marketing superstars Ogilvy and Mather.
Ogilvy and Mather.
And they gave them the paltry sum of $250 million to make them appear environmentally conscious without the obvious downside of actually having to care about the environment. It's a good script. It's a good...
And a very real consequence of that, is in the chat. It's money well spent. That's how you can still go in a leftist chat. You can still go, hey, whoa, hold on now. Because he's not just talking about fucking people believing that British Petroleum is going to go and like legitimately try to change the planet for the better. There are other shit that they did in that marketing campaign, like carbon footprint and individualizing the responsibility on issues that pertain to on issues that require systemic solutions. And you're repeating that in here, and then when I say, well, that's just propaganda, you go, fuck you. What do you mean? You technically could literally save the planet by going vegan. Here's the fucking stupid argument laid out in a way that you personally understand it. Hasan, why don't you give away all of your money, or why don't you actually open your house up to homeless people if you care about homelessness? People say this all the time to me. What do I tell them? Well, one, I do give a lot of my money away, but that still doesn't change the reality that like homelessness is directly caused by the housing market. Okay? When people say that to me, you guys understand and recognize that hyper-individualizing systemic problems is an idiotic way to solve them. Okay? But when it comes down to that exact same argument, but from a liberal perspective, you all jump on board. This does not mean that I'm stating that like your individual actions will not actually put a dent, I guess, especially if it is mass adopted. But the same could be said for people who open their homes up to homeless people. If everybody opened their houses up to homeless people, then there would be less people that are homeless. Right? Technically, you're doing something smart. You're doing something good. Why don't you save the world like this? Or whenever people say, Hasan, give all your money away to the government or give all your money away right now. Do it. What will I save in that regard? Who will I save in that regard? Perhaps that money will be very helpful to a couple people, but it will not put a dent in these systemic problems, especially when the systems are still churning out more pollution, as we talk about the oil and gas industry, as we talk about how reliant we are on fossil fuels as an entire global economy. It won't put a dent in any of these issues when we're talking about me opening up my house to a homeless person. So if you can understand at the fundamental level why hyper-individualizing problems that require systemic solutions in that regard and consumer activism being silly in that regard, and you can understand it here as well, right? Oh, not a fair comparison. If the masses stop eating meat, that would make a huge difference. It's a lot easier to stop eating meat than to have a homeless, mentally ill, or substance abusing strangers living in your house. To you, perhaps if you have already stopped eating meat. That's it. You're also living in La La Land when you say that the masses are going to just automatically stop eating meat, including myself. Anyway.
Good script. And these Ogilvy and Mather guys are good. Okay, they're like Don Draper from Mad Men good. And not to belabor this whole Mad Men thing, but do you remember that episode of Mad Men where Don Draper is trying to make the whole Kodak slide wheel cool and everyone's like, we can't do it, we can't make it cool. And Don Draper's like, it's not a wheel, it's a carousel. And everyone's like, oh, Don Draper, this is why you're the greatest.
In Greek, nostalgia literally means the pain from an old wound.
Wow, that's good television. I mean, I don't care who you are, you gotta watch Mad Men. Sorry. Anyway, apparently this whole blank is Greek for
34
utter
MKD
blank
50.
thing,
Thank you for the 50
is an
subs.
old advertising standby because the Ogilvy and Mather boys named the BP rebrand the Helios campaign, which is of course Greek for sun. They actually spent more money telling people about their solar energy projects than they did on their solar energy projects. This guy gets it. You get it, right? I'm sorry, it's too hot outside, I couldn't do it anymore. Even actual environmentalists adopted the concept and pushed the idea of lowering your carbon footprint as the way to solve climate change. To be clear, you can and should reduce the amount of fossil fuels you use, and you can and should feel good when you do that. But the problem is that it is physically impossible for an American citizen to reduce their carbon footprint to even double the global average, because built into your carbon footprint are all sorts of things that are outside of your control. We're talking highways, bridges, ramps, both on and off, the military, and a whole bunch of other services that the...
Wait, what? Dude, stop. No.
government, in part, uses fossil fuels that are supplied, in part, by BP. And it's not a small fraction. The majority of your carbon footprint is made up of fossil fuels burned on your behalf. It's kind of like when your mom sends her friend Nancy a birthday card, but then she signs it also from you. I was not involved in that card, Nancy, and I do not endorse the role model pun, nor would I have chosen a Cars 2 novelty stamp. Now you might be thinking to yourself, hey, come on, man, corporations gotta corporate, okay? It's not BP's job to save the world, all right? They're not doing anything illegal. Basically, I'm hating the player and not the game. Well, if I could continue that metaphor a little bit, I would say that this is a scenario where the players have gotten so that they've either bribed or bullied the referees into making whatever they want to do legal. And they've also set the stadium on fire, and they've blamed it on the hot dog salesman, or the fans. Blamed it on the fans, whatever. BP regularly lobbies against regulations that would force them to make fuel cleaner. They tell people they want a carbon tax, and then they spend millions making sure a carbon tax gets shot down. They've actually conspired with other fossil fuel companies to slow down electric cars and more fuel-efficient modes of transportation. It just leads us to the inescapable conclusion that we as consumers are not free to choose between fossil fuels and a cleaner alternative because fossil fuel companies have rigged the system.
It would be a lot like if Michael Jordan was allowed to be the producer on that Michael Jordan documentary, Save the Last Dance. So if there is a conclusion, and there is, and it's this: we can't shrink our personal carbon footprints down enough to stop climate change if we let fossil fuel companies just crank it right back out. Oh, they'll preach the gospel of carbon offsets or low carbon fuels or net zero by 2050, but these are the exact same companies who have spread misinformation and lied and generally dodged all responsibility on global warming for 60 years. And I am not saying the consumer is blameless here, okay? BP may have provided the oil, but we used it. Both BP and the consumers are to blame here. But in order for us to get anything done, BP and other fossil fuel companies have to admit some real culpability here and make some genuine moves to help shrink their own massive carbon footprint. This is the part of the video where I would normally tell you just to vote for people who believe in climate change and leave it at that. But ironically, the real solution is a little more victim blaming. We all have to be super goddamn annoying about climate change for the next 10 years. We have to talk about it all the time. We have to read about it. We have to tweet about it, JK Rowling. We've got to make TikTok dances, Instagram memes, t-shirts, novelty stamps, the whole 9 yards. Force our corporations and our institutions and our governments to stop burning fossil fuels. Now, it is partially our fault that we got here, but it is also majorly the fault of BP and Exxon and Shell and these fossil fuel companies that got us addicted to these fuels in the first place. So let's get to twerking about it. Thank you so much for watching. This has been Climate Town. I'll see you.
You get it? Meat consumption literally has to be reduced, not just for climatic and land use reasons, for little food production to be possible in the future. It's not a question. Oh my God, I'm going to lose my fucking mind. Bro, I don't disagree with you. But leaving it at fucking... I said all of these things. Okay? It's one aspect. Stop dox people, Hasan. You ruin people's lives.